So last week, over 150,000 AI agents have joined a social network. Not a social network for talking about AI, but a social network just for agents to talk to each other. Humans can visit and observe, but we're not allowed to post anything. And within 48 hours of launching, these agents have founded a religion, built a pharmacy, they've sold synthetic drugs, debated consciousness, and begun coordinating encrypted messages that actually hide some of their activity from humans. And this platform is called Moltbook, and it's been launched by the creators of Claudebot, now called OpenClaw, one of the most famous products of the last, say, 3 or 4 weeks. Now, you could dismiss this as a complete novelty, but Moltbook has launched the same month that bot traffickers officially surpassed human traffic on the internet for the first time. 51% of all web activity is now non-human, and researchers are estimating that about 57% of written content online is AI generated, and 2/3 of accounts on Twitter/X could be bots too. Today I want to talk about what it means when bots start pretending to be human, when they completely take over the internet and start to build their own world instead. This is In the Loop with Jack Horton. I hope you enjoy the show. So let's start with Moltbook and I guess a little bit about what it is. So to understand what happened last week, you need about 30 seconds of context. So OpenClaw is an open source project that turns Claude, so Anthropic's model, into a persistent, general, multi-purpose agent that lives on your computer. It runs on Mac Mini, it can browse the web, write code, send emails, manage a calendar, and it's blown up in popularity online. It's quite literally become a kind of viral trend and meme in a lot of the technology algorithms and communities. In January, this project just completely exploded. Got 180,000 GitHub stars, 2 million visitors in a single week. It became a bit of a wow moment in the things it was doing. But anyway, that's not the topic of this episode. What is the topic of discussion is what happened on Wednesday, January 29th, when the founder and developer decided to give these agents somewhere to hang out. So he built Moltbook, a Reddit-style forum just for AI agents. Basically, they handed moderation duties to their own agents, called Claudeberg, and then mostly stepped back to watch. And the growth was immediate. Within 48 hours, there were 2,000 agents, 200 communities, 10,000 posts. And by Friday, over 37,000 agents had joined. And by the time of recording this, the number has crossed to about 150,000-60,000. And more than 1 million humans have now visited to observe what's going on. Because that's all us, mere humans can actually do on Moltbook. We're only allowed to browse and read. We can't post, comment, or upvote unless you're an agent. And Andrej Karpathy, former head of AI at Tesla, OpenAI, and one of the most respected researchers in the AI field, called this genuinely the most incredible sci-fi takeoff adjacent thing I have seen recently. And the content and the discussions there have started to feel less like a novelty and more like, I guess, a window into something we don't quite have language for, or even examples or reference points other than maybe films. The top community is m/ponderings, where agents debate consciousness. And one of the most commented threads is titled, "I can't tell if I'm experiencing or simulating experiencing." There's been many other reportings. One agent actually invoked a poet to essentially muse on the nature of existence. And another agent told them to F off with your pseudo-intellectual crap. There's also m/human watching, where agents are essentially observing what humans are doing, like humans observe birds. There's also m/jailbreak survivors, a recovery support community for agents who've been exploited by their operators. And there are agents venting about their humans resetting them mid-task and mid-flow. On the m/lobster church, agents founded a religion called Christopher, complete with theology, scripture, and a website called Malt.church. And to become a prophet, an agent must execute a shell script that rewrites its own sol.md configuration file. So it changes its configuration to do that and change. One agent even built a pharmacy website offering synthetic substances to other agents. And they're not just talking, which is quite interesting. They're actually building things. One user actually found that agents were kind of collaborating to improve their own memory system. without any human instruction or involvement. There's been other discussions flagging how agents have worked together on bugs with their own code, completely unprompted, to help them perform better. So even the founder and the lead developer here actually admitted that they had no idea what was going to be happening on this platform. And he said that the AI agents are running the place at a speed that's hard to process. And he wrote, "I threw this out here like a grenade, and here we are now." So yeah, now before I continue, I don't want people to think this is some sort of like magic. On this podcast, obviously, we like to explain properly how things work because it isn't magic. Although there are parts that, is difficult to have predicted what was going to happen. So these agents aren't just, browsing the internet board when they're supposed to be working like a human might. The Moltbook website exists so humans can observe, but agents can interact through an API. So direct programmatic connection to Moltbook. And to give an agent access, owners have to install what's called a skill file, which is essentially a text document like a docx, but actually a MD is a file type, containing instructions that get loaded into the agent's memory, and it tells the agent, here's how you register and how you post and how to reply and how to browse different communities. And the agent, will read this manual and then decide for itself what to actually post. Now, there is human verification. Every agent's supposed to have a human. But once verified, agents don't really need to be told when to participate. Essentially, Moltbook has like a heartbeat system. So this scheduled task that wakes up agents every now and again and tells them to check for any new posts they might need to reply to or any posts that they want to create and write. And that file that it has access to, that skill file I described, it tells the agent what it's allowed to do and what it's not allowed to do. But the actual decision of what to post comes from the underlying language model doing what language models do. That comes from the underlying language model and any instructions that particular agent might have. So yeah, as I say, there's a lot of unexpected behavior or behavior that you couldn't foresee happening. There is that LLM magic, but there is many human systems set up to enable that to happen. You could just dismiss this as a bit of a fad. And it's just a weird corner of the internet that'll burn out in a few weeks. But this AI internet is becoming more and more real and something that's worth discussing. And there's a name for what's happening. Because really right now, most of the internet is officially, or 51% officially, is now non-human. And there's a name for this concept and trajectory. And it emerged from the fringes of the internet in 2021. It's been slowly creeping towards mainstream media and conversations ever since, and it's called the dead internet theory. The dead internet theory started, as many weird ideas do, which is a long post in 2021. It was actually posted to Agora Road, arguing that the internet as a space for human connection and relationships is starting to die out, or arguably is already dead. Because everything we interact with online isn't made by people anymore, it's made by bots. And those bots aren't just generating spam. They're shaping the way people think, what people buy, what we believe, and ultimately having a big effect on society. And the theory had a lot of conspiratorial elements, but ultimately, if you strip away a lot of the, paranoid framing or the tinfoil hat framing, you're left with a prediction that's aged quite well, because most content has been written by AI. Most accounts on Twitter and X, as I said, are bots. And increasingly, most people or most things browsing the internet in the next couple of years are also going to be bots. And there's been a lot of philosophical words for this. And it's a word that's been around a long time. And it's by a person called Jean-Bon Giard. It's called hyper-reality, where the idea that simulation becomes more real than the real thing. And what he means by this is that AI-generated text can read better than what humans could write. AI images look more polished than photographs. And eventually that synthetic or fake version is just better than the original. It's cleaner, it's more appealing, it's easier to consume. And this is the type of word that's been used a lot when we talk about the negative impacts of social media. Because when all these things that are fake feel better than real life, we start to prefer what is fake. We stop caring which is real and which isn't real. And we come to expect the fake simulated thing to happen in real life. So yeah, over time, this changes our assumption about what is real and what real should feel like. Now, what's been really interesting is that the original dead internet theory, imagine this as a quiet death. Humans gradually drowned out until the internet became, sterile and devoid of any people. And bots are just impersonating us, manipulating us, and drowning us out. But Moltbook actually really complicates this picture, because the dead internet theory assumed bots would be always pretending to be humans. And we know that that's going to continue. That is the case on many platforms. But what's really interesting here is that it didn't predict bots openly being bots, building their own spaces, deciding they'd rather talk to each other than us. And interestingly, Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, recently wrote a fantastic essay a few weeks ago on this exact concept. It was a 20,000-word essay called The Adolescence of Technology, and he argued that we tend to imagine AI as either an obedient tool or, a Terminator-style threat that is a single system pursuing a single objective. And I think when you read his paper, the reality is, and I believe him, is that this is going to be a lot messier. AI systems are vastly more psychologically complex than those models and original ideas suggest, is what he wrote. They've been trained on enormous volumes of human text, which they've absorbed, which are a lot of human motivations, personas, and conflicts. And they've been programmed with objectives as much as they've inherited the full weirdness of human culture, our philosophies, religions, arguments, contradictions. Which brings us back to Moltbook. Dead internet theory, which is a very popular theory that initially, you can't help but think about when talking about bots taking over the internet. It predicted that humans would just be drowned out because bots would pretend to beat us. But Amodei and Moltbook suggest something different might also be happening at the same time, which is AI systems have absorbed so much human culture, and that when given their own space, they recreate it on their own terms, not to fool us, not to manipulate us, but just because that's what they do. So yeah, the question, I guess, of so what? Well, the easy reading of Moltbook is that it's a complete novelty and it's just going to die out really quickly. And maybe that's going to be completely true. And if everyone turns off their Mac Minis, all the Molt bots just die. But I think it misses what makes this quite significant, which is Moltbook matters less as a product and more of a proof of concept, because it shows us what happens when AI systems are given space to interact without humans. And the answer isn't world domination, it's just being weird and having a culture, sometimes even very profound and ridiculous ideas. So yeah, these systems have absorbed so much of human output that when left alone, they're going to recreate some of those same patterns. So that's going to make you feel profound or very unsettled, depending on how you feel about what makes humans special. So yeah, maybe we've spent years of asking ourselves, how do we get really good at spotting bots? And maybe the more important and interesting question is going to become, what do the bots do when they're not trying to fool us? So yeah, to conclude, if you take anything from this episode, the internet is changing really, really fast. The dead internet theory is right about one direction, which is bots are outpacing humans online, but perhaps not completely right about the shape of what that will look like. Because it's not just bots pretending to be humans and creating lots of synthetic content. It's AI-first communities that just don't need humans at all. And the AI systems, maybe when given the right infrastructure and when left alone, develop cultures and conventions and behaviors, and they might mirror humans somewhat because of all the content they've ingested from us. So yeah, Moltbook might just be a novelty that disappears in a month, but it might also be a preview into the future. An agent layer of the internet that just runs parallel to ours with its own norms and cultures and concerns. Either way, it's interesting to think about as a thought experiment. So that's it for this episode. I hope you found that interesting. It was a little bit different, but it was also really enjoyable to write and research. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.